More than 1,600 now killed by the coronavirus in China, and a first death reported in Taiwan. We bring you the latest developments on the global outbreak. A UN official says airstrikes in Yemen have killed over 30 civilians. This believed to be a reprisal for the downing of a Saudi fighter jet claimed by Houthi rebels. And the French health minister tapped by President Macron's party to run in next month's Paris mayor race. Agnès Buzyn replaces Benjamin Griveaux following his sexting scandal. Thanks much for joining us here on France 24. I'm Charlie James. Taiwan has recorded its first death from the coronavirus, and authorities are trying to figure out how the victim contracted the disease. The 61-year-old man has no known history of travel to mainland China. It's suspected he may have been infected by a passenger while working as a taxi driver. Meanwhile, in mainland China, just over 2,000 new cases were recorded on Sunday, down by over 600 over the previous day. Authorities say the slowing rate of new infections shows its steps to fight the outbreak are working.
As Sunday greeted China, so did the news from government officials that new coronavirus cases had fallen, now for the third straight day. It marks a positive step for the country, with over 68,000 total infections already confirmed and the death toll rising every day. Methods of combating the COVID-19 virus have varied. Chinese scientists are testing several antiviral drugs, while the head of a Wuhan hospital said plasma infusions from recovered patients had shown some encouraging preliminary results.
In our hospital, there have been 4 patients who have received plasma from convalescent patients. At present, in a short period of time, they've shown positive signs. Their vitals are stable, they are in a better condition, and their blood oxygen has stabilized.
Taking the immunity of one and passing it on to another. But despite the progressive outlook, world authorities remain on high alert.
Let me be clear. It's impossible to predict which direction this epidemic will take. We're encouraged that the steps China has taken to contain the outbreak at its source appear to have bought the world time, even though those steps have come at greater cost to China itself, but it's slowing the spread to the rest of the world.
The virus has hit China the hardest, with some 60 million people now locked down in quarantine. Over 1,600 people have succumbed to its effects within the country. However, outside the mainland, only 4 deaths have been confirmed since the epidemic began.
Cruise ships continue to be problematic in the fight to contain this virus. The number of people infected on the Diamond Princess ship, quarantined off Japan, has risen to 355. That's a daily jump of 70 people. The outbreak represents the biggest cluster of cases outside China. And in a separate incident, an American woman who disembarked from the Westerdam ship in Cambodia last week has twice tested positive for the virus. She had since flown to Malaysia. Cambodia allowed the ship to dock after 5 other countries turned it away over concerns the coronavirus was on board. The United Nations says at least 31 civilians have been killed in an airstrike in northern Yemen. It is believed to be a Saudi-led reprisal for the downing of one of the kingdom's planes on Friday. Iran-backed Houthi rebels claimed responsibility for the crash. James Wilson with more on the strike the UN is calling shocking.
In the mountainous region of northern Yemen, locals inspect the bomb damage. Saturday night airstrikes by Saudi Arabia killed dozens of civilians, and anger at the kingdom is visceral.
This is one of the cars that was targeted by the Saudi American Air Force last night. And they also targeted villages in Malaha area and residential areas, causing dozens of martyrs and injuries.
Houthi rebels in the region described the attack as retaliation after they claimed responsibility for shooting down a tornado jet from the Saudi-led coalition on Friday night. And the kingdom's state-run news agency said possible collateral damage from a rescue operation in the area was being investigated. Saudi Arabia intervened in Yemen's civil war in 2015 when the Iranian-backed Houthi rebels toppled the country's internationally recognized government. But on the diplomatic side, Riyadh says it is still negotiating with the Houthis and is aiming for de-escalation.
I think it's making progress. We have seen some deterioration recently, but we are committed to pushing it forward. However, we will, of course, if there is provocation on the ground, we will have to respond. But we are working very, very hard to find a way forward.
The UN has described Yemen as the world's worst humanitarian crisis. Since the intervention, 100,000 Yemeni have died, and the country is on the brink of famine.
Wales bearing the brunt of Storm Dennis's wrath as it sweeps across Britain. Police have been dealing with multiple landslides and floods, some trapping residents. Hundreds of flood warnings have been issued across the UK. Catherine Ketter-Clifford shows us the damage.
Amid warnings of life-threatening flooding, vulnerable residents were evacuated in this Welsh town. In nearby Pontypool, the River Taff has burst its banks, submerging vehicles and flooding homes.
Last night, the water boards, they was knocking on our door, move the cars. And we moved the car, and after then, just rapidly the water rised. And suddenly it's in a house.
Soldiers and reservists were sent to help out communities in the Calder Valley in West Yorkshire, where flood barriers gave way. This flight struggled to land at Heathrow, while hundreds of others were cancelled due to high winds.
Is he going to go around? Oh my God, look at it!
It comes barely a week after Storm Ciara also caused disruption to transport, flooded homes and left thousands without electricity. Meanwhile, France's northern coast was also hit by the storm. Clouds of foam struck this village in the Finistère region in Brittany, where winds reached over 100 kilometers per hour.
Back here in France, President Emmanuel Macron's party has a new candidate to run in the Paris mayor race. The French health minister, Agnès Buzyn, has been chosen by the ruling party. She'll take the place of Benjamin Griveaux, who dropped out Friday after a sexually explicit video of him was posted online. Buzyn faces stiff competition against socialist incumbent Anne Hidalgo, but says her new campaign is serious.
Today, I decided to run as a candidate for the Paris mayorship. I'm going for it wholeheartedly and with complete commitment, diligence and determination. I'm in it to win this. I've always lived in this city. I was born here. I've worked here. I raised my children here. I know it. I also know its problems, and they need to be resolved with calm and determination. Today, I'm asking for the trust of the men and women of Paris to improve the quality of everyday life for those who live here.
Pour améliorer la qualité de vie et le quotidien de ceux qui y vivent.
And finally, step aside Paris. This weekend, the French city of Nice became the world capital of fashion. The 136th Nice Carnival opened with the theme King of Fashion. Nearly 1 million visitors will come to revel in the parades of flowers, giant puppets, and floats. Take a look.
A burst of colour and light in the middle of the French winter. The Carnival of Nice brings nearly 1 million visitors to the French Riviera, united by a love of fashion, flair and having a good time.
It's magnificent. We got dressed up to take part in the Carnival of Nice.
The carnival tradition dates back to the Middle Ages, but with its blazing lights, modern floats and thousands of selfies taken, this carnival is decidedly 21st century in nature. An estimated 200,000 people turn out to the inaugural parade, with this year's theme, the King of Fashion, paying tribute to fashion legends such as Jean-Paul Gaultier, Sonia Rykiel and Karl Lagerfeld.
All the floats and everything are really well done, really very beautiful.
4 years after the Bastille Day terrorist attack in which a truck driver in Nice ploughed into a crowd of partygoers, security remains high, with a perimeter installed to allow for checks before visitors join their fellow revellers.
Stay tuned to France 24. More news coming up next.